Hello and welcome back to the Fit for Business Life podcast. The Fit Business and Life podcast is brought to you in partnership with Sharp Fit for Life and the Business Body Network, improving the performance and transforming busy and overweight professionals, business owners, consultants, and their teams to become fitter, happier, and more confident. The Fit for Business Life podcast is all about sharing passion, knowledge, and expertise around business and personal performance from our host, myself, Martin Sharp, a 30-year change maker in businesses large and small, and Dominic Furness, a world traveler and life enthusiast, plus special guests sharing their know-how and experience in making changes in business and in themselves, featuring inspirational stories, insights, tips, and practical knowledge, bringing more healthier, happier, and high achievement to your world.
Why not follow this podcast? We are live on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you are watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We very much appreciate all of your support.
So sit back and enjoy this episode of the Fit Business and Life podcast, brought to you in partnership with Sharp Fit for Life and the Business Body Network. And today I'm going to be interviewing Dom around moderation.
Oh yeah.
So we started to touch on this over the last couple of episodes. Because obviously you mentioned about your circadian rhythm, you mentioned about sleep, you kind of mentioned about, not being good at taking those rest periods. So this is kind of what it's all about. When we talk about moderation, it's actually, taking that time to de-stress, to provide great sleep, to socialize in the right kind of ways, and effectively giving yourself that space that you need to actually enjoy life.
Yeah, and I have been reflecting on what I said about the moderation piece and the fact that I'm not very good at it since we last spoke. And I would kind of like to rephrase or reframe that perspective or point by saying, I'm not very good at resting, but it feels like a very manageable level right now. And I was just looking at it from throughout the day. I tend to like to do a lot of movement. But then my rest on an evening is very good. I have a very good routine when it comes to winding down and going to sleep and waking up at the same times most days if I can. And yeah, I perhaps don't rest as much as most people would in the day, but I think my evening routine is good, or at least compared to what I used to have, it's a lot better. So I am getting that rest and recovery piece in there.
Yeah, because the modifications and changes and the adaptations that happen in your body all happen not while you're actually providing the stimulus, but afterwards where you're kind of relaxing. So I think, again, sometimes it can be very hard on ourselves. And that's that kind of personal viewpoint of saying, okay, I'm not quite good enough for this. But then it's kind of thinking in comparison to what, or in comparison to whom, or where's that kind of come from in some respects. Because you are right. I mean, I can remember back to, when you really did struggle with things like sleep.
Oh, yeah. But you just, the thing is, right, the phone, that's the problem. If you take away the phone, you can just go to sleep. It's really quite crazy. You're in bed, oh, I can't sleep early, but you're on your phone till 1 a.m. I've been there, I've done that. And then, as soon as I just stop going on my phone, I'm like, oh, I'm actually tired. And if I can't stay awake, but I need to stay awake for something, just go on my phone and then I can stay awake. It's it's such a crazy thing, to be honest. And once I learned to just put that away, it's amazing how tired I actually felt, which helped, because for many years I just thought not that I had insomnia, but I was just sleep's not important and I can't do it anyway, so it doesn't matter. I'll sleep when I'm dead kind of thing. And yeah, I've kind of, I mean, there is this balancing out the circadian rhythm with the lighting and actually winding down. So I am sort of right, I'm going to bed now. And it felt like a waste of life, to be honest, at the start trying to do that. But then I now see the value in having the energy through the day and just sacrificing an hour of my evening to wind down.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of the big value, because what you're doing is you're getting a great payback. You're actually putting the time in to rest, relax, take that opportunity to put yourself into that right position. And sleep is probably the number one thing that most people don't have, or it's the first thing that kind of gets sacrificed when something needs to get done.
Yeah, it's easy enough. And for me personally, going to bed late and sleeping in is not the answer for me. You need a certain amount of hours on a night. It differs from person to person. Yours is, I think, a bit less than what mine is. But I did used to, even if I went to bed late on a weekend, at least I did manage to get into the habit of sleeping in quite a bit later. But that's just not how my natural body clock is. And I think you lose a lot of that in your teens. Like, I guess you do what your parents suggest when you're younger. And then when you're in your teens, you let loose a bit and stay up quite a lot later. And then just gradually over time, like mid-20s, it seems to like fluctuate back to whatever was natural.
I like that. I think do what your parents suggest, potentially, maybe, possibly, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh dear. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it is a case of growing up, and I think there's some natural kind of evidence that actually, as you kind of transition into teenage years, etc., your body does change, so that your timing does become different to the rest of the people in the family, and you start going to bed later, waking up later, etc. And it's a classic set of cliches, but the cliches for a reason. You know, these are patterns in life that do currently exist.
Yeah, and again, like what we were saying in the previous episode, I felt fine at the time doing that, like coming in and going to bed at like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, and then just waking up a bit later on and just getting on with the day. But then like work changes, other things in the lifestyle change. Like, I think the two main contributors for the rest of recovery, in my experience, is basically not being on the phone and not drinking like a fish. Because like alcohol and probably caffeine, but definitely alcohol is like one of the worst things you can do for sleep. Like, you might feel like you've had an amazing sleep, or at least again, this is what the studies show. But like, yeah, you could have what feels like an amazing sleep, but the actual quality of the sleep is so minimal. And I know people can use like drugs or alcohol to feel like it's the only way they feel like they can fall asleep. But then you're falling asleep and having the lower quality, which is just not really what you want to be doing. I wouldn't really ever say I've been in that space myself, but I do know there's like a thing that people do. And I have definitely had those nights where you like been to the pub and you come back and just boom, like straight asleep. And it does feel pretty good. But then you got to realize the quality wasn't great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's two interesting points you kind of brought up there. I mean,
Have you shrunk? Why is so low down?
I've got no idea. I think the chair's gas lift, I think, it's kind of just gone down.
You want to try like pull it up, or you're happy down
I
there?
will
I just looked over and you're a few inches lower.
I'll sort it out later. But yeah, there's two kind of really interesting things that you kind of brought up there. One is in regards to the timing side of things, and yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people struggle with this, especially with people that've got families and got teenagers, because all of a sudden the house turns into what almost feels like a 24-hour house.
Well, what it is, it's Piccadilly Circus.
Exactly. So as one person comes in, another person goes to bed, and it becomes unsettling for everybody who's kind of in that environment. So that kind of sleep cycle doesn't just affect the one person who's kind of coming in late and getting up late. It actually affects everybody in the household. And I think that's the one thing that many people don't kind of realize, and or don't put the two and two together to actually know this is kind of one of the kind of key reasons. And that might be because of things like worry, it might be because of the noise, it might be because of 1,000 other little things that are kind of going on. But it is an impacting thing that happens across everybody. So someone in that family may be looking to try and actually improve their sleep quality, etc. But everybody else is kind of not necessarily on that same wavelength. So part of it's almost having that conversation and saying, okay, this is what my pattern's going to be. This is how it's going to work. This is, can you help and support me in that? And seeing if you can try to bring people around. Now, teenagers are different. I mean, we all know that they don't necessarily always listen. They don't necessarily always consider everybody else's feelings and opinions. But certainly, as I've seen you kind of grow into this kind of new way of working, you've done similar kind of things. You've kind of said, okay, actually, no, I'm going to try and get to bed at like 8, 9 o'clock in the evening. I might naturally wake up at like 5:30, and therefore that's going to become your rhythm. And I know it doesn't always fit in with the household schedule, and that's kind of caused you a few issues, especially, for example, when it comes down to trying to get to sleep. So you found some ingenious ways of trying to manage that, though.
Yeah, so I'll say like, yeah, like in principle, like it's good to have these conversations and people respect it, but life is life. And when you have a household like ours, I guess, where it's like people, it is like Piccadilly Circus here, and there's variables you can't change. Like sometimes you do have to go for a meeting where you have to leave super early to get there, or like, yeah, like it's not necessarily possible. So then I think it's just down to finding ways to relax, and you'll get used to the noise and stuff. Like, the good thing about being human is we adapt to our environment. And I would say at first it's quite like a knot in the chest, trying to like do this thing, and it stresses you out more that you can't do it. And you touched upon this a bit yesterday with the person who always went food shopping to the market to get organic, and it's like, at what point is it actually costing you because the stress is more than the sleep you're getting. And like I was saying yesterday, it's all a trial and error. Because you mentioned there, like trying to go to bed at 8, and I'll say like, like probably, I don't remember it being like 8. That seems really early, but I definitely tried to go way earlier than what my natural sleep pattern is, and it just didn't work, and it was more annoying laying in bed awake. So I would say like it's again like drifting a bit later, and it's summertime, and it is. You asked how like the things that I put in place to make it possible, basically. Like I'd say the hardest thing is summer. Like the birds are chirping, the sun is shining, and it's like I'm trying to go to sleep. It feels like the most unnatural thing ever. So I have just tried to implement like wind down time, like, you know, just be in a darker room with like a different source of lighting that's not the most blue light it could possibly be. And like if I'm having my tea and the sun is beaming in through the windows, maybe just like shut the blinds. And again, like this is hard to get used to at first because it feels like you're wasting your life. Like it's sunny, like I want to be outside, like the world is telling me go outside, like it doesn't make sense to be going to sleep. But it is like worth it for, well, the recovery basically. You can't just keep going all the time. I would say, like being in England specifically, or some other Scandinavian countries, it is definitely more difficult to dial these things in because our like levels of daylight fluctuate to the extreme. Like I do think England is one of the worst, or Great Britain, for that fluctuation. Because you'll hear loads on like other podcasts and in books and studies like get your morning daylight every morning, and for the circadian rhythm purposes. And then like, if you're staying up late, you can look at something like the sunset to offset like the imbalance in sleep and stuff. But in the UK, like these are all people like in America where that is possible. Like over here in wintertime, no daylight. Or at least when you do get the daylight, it's not the quality of daylight. And then in the summertime, it's so much longer. And then we're always like flipping the clocks around, and that like jumps you forward and stuff. Like it is definitely a hard country. And I know Scandinavia is similar to do these things. And it's a bit annoying to listen to at first, but you can do things to sort of like artificial lighting. Like you can get like this is a brand like a Lumi lamp, but you have to get a Lumi one that just basically pumps bright light into your eyes in the morning, so then you can like fake that circadian rhythm. And for anybody who's skeptical, I was also extremely skeptical at the beginning of doing this because I was like, we're trying to get a natural rhythm back in check by doing something completely unnatural. Like it just seemed bizarre. I could not wrap my head around it. It's like, how are people calling this natural when it's a light that you plugged into electricity? Like that is far from natural. But I think the effects of it are quite good, like quite profound. Like I've definitely found it beneficial. But again, everybody's different. So finding your way. But yeah, research into circadian rhythm, I'd say if you're having trouble sleeping, it does make it a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think there's some other things you kind of put in place as well. So, for example, we touched there on keeping a nice dark room. So again, your bedroom's kind of nice and dark. You put blackout blinds up. You keep it cool, so it's like it's colder than most other rooms in the house. You don't have heating on even in winter.
Yeah, I didn't touch on the heat stuff. I touched on the blind stuff, like eating my tea and that. But yeah, the hot one is an interesting one because we also cycle in temperature while you sleep, as I'm sure you know. I know you know all these things, but just for the listeners, but they probably know as well. But yeah, like you cycle through the temperature, and like the thing is, you're meant to be the hottest on the morning, but I don't really have that experience because I think I just get so hot in the day. I'm just dying in bed, just absolutely boiling, especially in the summertime. So yeah, keeping the room cool, that's a good one. And yeah, in winter, it is a bit like a fridge in there compared to the rest of the house. But I do find that helps because being hot is like another really bad thing for sleep. Like if you're too hot, then you're not going to have a good quality of sleep either.
Yeah, then with the other thing would be around what you've done with noise cancelling headphones as well. So again, combating the sounds of the chirping birds. I mean, the one thing you did say is the noise cancelling headphones has been great for generally getting rid of most of the noise, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't get rid of conversational.
Yeah, and that's just personally on me. And the noise cancelling headphones are great, but I try not to use them all the time because it's almost a form of conditioned association in a way, and I don't want to be, because I've traveled quite a bit, and I don't want to have to rely on them. I want to be able to sleep without using them, and I also like sometimes wear an eye mask, sometimes don't. Like I am a bit big on that as well because I don't want to take something away and then I can't sleep because it's so conditioned in, and then I again have that anxiety around like, oh, it's not perfect, I can't do it, I can't sleep. I don't want it to be like that, so I do try to switch between. But yeah, the noise cancelling headphones are great. Like if your house is not like Piccadilly Circus, they're still great for if you are on an aeroplane or something like that and you just want to drown out that background noise. And I think some, because the way they work is they match the frequencies, and I think some of the technologies are better than others or programs slightly different. So I guess not necessarily the more money you spend, but the better quality product you get will probably have a faster processing time of equaling out those waves, science waves of some kind.
Yeah, the frequencies.
The frequencies,
Yeah.
yeah. So it basically matches it. And yeah, like I've tried with many different pairs, and I do have a favorite, but I don't know how much we can talk about brands on here. But yeah, some are definitely better than others. And
Yeah.
again, it's like trial and error, but it's all money at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's also a case of personal preference and trying to
Personal
find those
preference, yeah.
things that kind of work for you. So, and again, I know the time and trouble you've done to try and create that environment, and specifically so that you can get that better quality sleep, so you can get the better quality rest and recovery for your body, which means that you're seeing the results because you're doing that
Oh
with
yeah.
your life.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to try these things. Yeah, and then as I say, it's all purpose driven, really, because I don't want to be in a position where I have to rely on these things. But the aids, they're helpful. It's
Yeah.
good. It's
And before you were kind of putting that quality sleep in, what you were finding is you weren't necessarily getting the same results out. You weren't having that kind of same muscular development. You weren't having that same kind of energy level that you had in the day. Your thought process wasn't as sharp or as quick, etc. So again, it's not just a case of you've done it because everyone says you should do it. You've done it and you've seen the results because of what you've done.
yeah, and again, like I've been speaking before, it's not like I set out with this intention. I was just a bit curious, to be fair, because like as you know, forever I just didn't care about sleep. I was like, it's point. Well, it's not pointless. Like I knew I needed it, but I didn't understand its impacts. I know, like a lot of people say about it, but it's like, yeah, I felt like it was a waste of life. But yeah, I have definitely seen the benefits. I can't necessarily definitely like correlate that one thing to like the muscle growth or the energy or whatever, but I think it definitely helps because if I have like a bad night's sleep, it does affect like my cognicity to some degree.
Yeah, and this is where, for example, you notice that because you're monitoring it, and we've kind of touched on this when we touched on meals and we touched on movement as well, and the mind piece. Because as a mechanical human being, effectively, we do have all these kind of things that are going on in our body. So it's not like there's one specific item that you say, okay, you do sleep, everything else is going to be great. Because if you didn't provide the stimulus through the movement and the exercise, then there's nothing there for your body to recover. If you didn't have the correct fueling strategy behind that, then you don't have the building blocks that allows your body to kind of recover or create muscle and things. So I kind of get it. It's not just one thing that's
Mhm.
causing this. But again, it's nice to see that you're seeing that kind of correlation of you do an action and you're getting a reaction from it, and you can quite clearly start to link those things together because that at the end of the day is where you start to learn and start to understand how your body actually works.
Most definitely. And just on the topic, since we're trying to talk about moderation here, we're very much gone into the rest and recovery side of things. I just want to say, like, yeah, it's like leading on from your point there, of going direct correlations. Like, I think you've got to like moderate the rest and recovery. You got to moderate like the meals you're eating. You got to moderate the amount of movement you're doing. Like, it's all a balancing act, which is like pretty cross topic of this. Everything we're talking about is all a balance of
Yeah.
everything. Like moderation in all things, it is a strong saying, and it's just like, yeah, like with the meals, like I like to look at it as a ratio of how much is like healthy versus unhealthy, because as we've touched on before, I don't want to miss out on going for meals and stuff. But like as long as it's a small percentage of the overall, it's fine. And then the same kind of the same for the movement, but not really. Like a bit sheepish around that topic. But no, like I think for me, it's that I am moderating it correctly. Like I feel fine, I feel great, I feel strong, and I want to have the energy to do all these things. And if I have the energy to do these things, well, I'm going to use the energy to do these things. Otherwise, it's a pointless surplus.
Yeah. And this guy's a lovely kind of segue back to the other point that you kind of mentioned, which was around alcohol as being one of those things. And when we're not whiter than white here, and we're not going to tell people not to have alcohol, and that's not the case of what we do in our lives, but it's a case of, like you're saying, is moderating it. So we understand what those impacts are. So for myself, I can very clearly see that. I monitor what happens with my sleep overnight using things like the Aura Ring, watch, etc., the various other kind of methods, but also them specifically how I feel. And I know exactly like you were saying, if you go, you can go to bed, you feel like you've gone to sleep straight away because you've had the alcohol, but actually the recovery and what's happening inside your body, the impacts that that has is detrimental. And I know that it can take 2, 3, 4 days, even for a very small amount of alcohol to go through my system these days.
Yeah, it just makes you feel very lethargic.
Yeah, you lose your edge, you feel lethargic, you're not recovering as quickly. So there's all those kind of impacts into how it actually affects your performance on a day-to-day basis. So again, it was kind of lovely you brought that one back in with regards to, even things like cheat meals stuff, or never call them that. It's just, the occasional meal. Having a little bit every now and again, it's not going to kill you, but do kind of realize it might have an impact on your performance. So choosing when, choosing where, choosing how, etc., can be quite important. So would you, for example, go and have alcohol before you're planning on doing a race, maybe a race within like a week or so? It's probably a no, you probably wouldn't do that. Saying, for example, you wouldn't necessarily go out there and have a large occasional meal a week before, unless you've kind of got something in there to counterbalance it. Have you got some extra running? Have you got some extra training sessions in there that can help to utilize some of those additional carbs and those additional fats that you can have taken on board? Because the reality is, most time, occasional meals, these kind of what people classify as cheat meals, tend to be high fat, high carbohydrates, high in salt, etc. So you need some way of being able to utilize that additional energy load.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I guess that's like, I wouldn't mind talking about this. I'll just say my 2p on this cheat meal situation. It feels like almost like an earned meal. Like I definitely don't view it as like, oh my gosh, like I'm cheating my diet, because I'm not. Like, as I say, I just keep in mind the ratio, and it's like, that's life. You need to have fun as well. And if like all the social connections that you've been brought from going to have that meal, it just far outweighs like the benefits of the health at that point, because you're not doing it every day. I agree with what you're saying about if again, it's very goal orientated. Like if you are an Olympian or whatever, like something like that, or you're not an Olympian, you've just got a big race coming up, or like your marathons, like, yeah, it's very wise to not have these toxins in your body while you're doing that intense training. But celebrating afterwards, absolutely fine, I would personally say. And everybody's body is different. Like if you know that you're going to react badly to these things, don't do it. But if you know that you're absolutely fine, then that's grand. Like, yeah, like I'm not against people having alcohol in any way. Like I don't really love it, but I do love beer. Like that is probably my kryptonite, to be honest. I just love beer. But again, it's just managing the levels of what you have, what you can tolerate, like what's gonna affect things. And yeah, there's the whole world to unravel there. But again, it's just goal specific and person specific.
Yeah, I think this is one of the reasons why when we're talking to our clients, we call them occasional meals as opposed to cheat meals, because again, it sets up the wrong kind of frame inside your mind, really.
It definitely does, because you're not cheating. Like you've been grinding, and it's just a part of life that people like to go out and do nice things. Like join them.
Yeah, and it's interesting you kind of added in that kind of social aspect, and that is one of the elements we talk about around moderation, is that whole socializing piece, because there is so many benefits that we get as human beings by socializing with people, and we have different social groups for different things. You'll have your peers, your colleagues, people to work with. You'll have clients. You're going to have your family, your friends. You'll have people inside your community, etc. And each one of those kind of groups will bring something else different to the table. And by interacting with them, whether that is doing sport with them, whether it is eating with them, whatever it is that's kind of happening with them, even if it's just doing the standard working day, you will find that when you bring a positive kind of attitude into this, it's going to help release things like the oxytocin, the endorphins, the dopamine, etc. Things that people classify as the kind of the happiness hormones. So it's interesting. Again, you've kind of already automatically brought in that kind of social aspect through meals, for example, and it's kind of this piece of moderation.
Of course, like everything's gonna offset something else, but it could be in like a positive way. Like, yeah, I wouldn't say like the best thing to do like is like have a habit of, but everybody's different, right? But I wouldn't say the best thing to do for me is like have a habit of like every Friday I'll have a takeaway or something, because that's not bringing those social connections that release these like happy chemicals. I think you phrased them as like, but going for something like a meal is quite important to me, because like you're seeing friends, you're seeing family, like you're out, you're having fun, and you're more relaxed. Like the stress is the big thing. Like the more stress you can remove, the healthier you're gonna be. Basically, like that is pretty much a direct correlation. And as long as you moderate that and are not like getting like addicted to that feeling of like going out and eating food with people all the time, it's like once in a while, fine. Like that ain't cheating in no way.
Yeah, so it's the again, very, very quick kind of stone of life type thing, but, save party food for parties, and, that kind of works quite well, and as long as you're not partying every single night, then it works as a nice way of thinking, "Actually, is this gonna benefit me, and how can I benefit me going forwards?" Um, and it's interesting. We're now kind of bringing in that kind of stress element of it, and we've talked obviously about the happiness hormones. We do have the kind of the alternative, which is the stress hormones like your adrenaline, your cortisol, etc. And these tend to get a fairly bad rep when it comes down to so much in life. And I kind of get it for the fact that most people associate stress with those bad periods in life. You've got a really crap week at work. This happens. You've had an altercation with a member of the family. Something's happened within your community, etc. And these kind of release all these kind of stress hormones. But the thing is, the other side of stress is actually the positive side. So actually utilizing these chemicals, utilizing this feeling that's going through your body, this additional energy, because it was there to utilize as a way of engaging that kind of fight, flight, freeze kind of response. So if we can again start to utilize it, these can be a great benefit. We're doing things like your exercise and your movement things. So how, for example, do you use like some of the movement aspects you use to actually manage and regulate some of those kind of stressful moments and things?
So I would actually say it's more the other way round, in the fact that I will utilize the sort of like, what's the opposite of being parasympathetic?
Sympathetic.
But being in those states to do like a resistance training, like that is the sort of place where you are going through it, and it is good to have those sort of like, I suppose it is sort of adrenaline in a way of like what you're doing. Like it's good to use that system of your body, like it's there, the fight or flight, use it for that. And then it's important to moderate that throughout the day of like doing things like nose breathing to regulate the parasympathetic nervous system instead. So you're sort of like doing that, and then that triggers you to be more relaxed. You don't have to be relaxed all the time. And then another interesting insight that I've had recently, again, thanks Amy, like for giving me this one. But the response of feeling like anxious is that kind of like travels through the same synapses as being excited.
Mhm.
So if I'm done something that's making me feel anxious, I'm like, am I anxious, or can I reframe this as I'm excited? So I do find that like quite helpful. And then you can bring that sort of in sports, and then like a way that I definitely, and we spoke about this in a previous episode as well, like really utilize the adrenaline was my double backflip that I did kind of recently. Like that was crazy. And without that like surge through my body, not gonna happen. And I was like, if you look at it purely from a health perspective, it is not good for your body to spike that much. But if you look at it from like mindset and how good that made me feel, and the memories that have been created, and like the self-belief that came from that, it's worth it. So again, it's just moderating how you view these feelings, and like the more understanding you can have of what is happening in your body, the better. Like to a point, like I have argued before, sometimes like I notice things happening. I'm like, "Ah, if I didn't have that knowledge, I wouldn't have noticed this." And I'm like, that technically didn't exist before, but it was happening in the background. And I'm like, I don't know how much I want to know about everything, but it's definitely cool to have these sort of recognition and, like, yeah, if I'm feeling anxious, I'm like, oh, I'm just excited. Like, it's a good one to bring back to that point again.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like the old adage of if a tree falls in the wood and no one's there to witness it, did it make a sound? And I think the reality is yes. So even if you weren't aware of these, weren't inside your kind of sphere of consciousness, it still kind of is there. It's
That's the
still
thing, yeah.
impacting your life, and the law kind of utilizes the same things. Ignorance of the law is not a defense. The law still exists whether you know it or not. And if you've
That's a
chosen
really good analogy, actually.
yeah, because if you've chosen to live in this country, you have to abide by the laws of the land effectively. So just because you don't understand them or you've not read them, etc., then it's not really an excuse. You're still going to have them. And you've got these things that are kind of governing your own body and what it's doing. And just because you might not know it right now, right at the moment in time, because it's not something you've learned or been taught, etc., it is something that's still happening. So as soon as it kind of becomes part of your conscious awareness, you can start to make a change on those things. And we've talked about this for years, for example, things like the reframing fear for excitement, because they just travel the same kind of synapses.
Well, this is the thing. I would like to correct myself, and I think they do not travel over the same synapse. They release the same chemicals. I think that's the difference. Like, I'd just like to clear up my mistake there. Like, the ones that travel through the same synapse are pain responses and something else. If you apply pressure, like, you can't feel pain and pressure in the same place because the neurons travel through the same synapse. That was that. The anxiety and excitement is a chemical release. So I'd like to clear that up. And if I'm wrong again, please correct me. I think that's right.
I wouldn't worry about it. For what you need to use it for, your idea and your concept to work.
Yeah, I guess conceptually it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and this is the kind of difference, whether if you're going to become a brain surgeon, yes, it's going to make a big difference, but that's not necessarily the path you're taking.
Yeah, and we should probably do a bit of a disclaimer of just like, don't listen to that as fact.
I love it. So again, coming back to that whole idea of you create your own reality based on what you know at the time, and obviously learning is this kind of big piece that goes around it. You're still going to be affected by these things, but as soon as you kind of learnt it, you've now got the ability to affect the change.
Well, yeah, you've got the ability to moderate the change in the future. That's the thing. But it again, like with all the other things, it just comes with learning.
Yeah, this is one of the crazy things about stress in some respects. And again, looking at some of the studies, even, acknowledging a stress exists lowers the stress level in your body. So accepting that stress is there lowers the stress level. And again, it's just those simple things that of knowing how to do it. So again, when we do work with a lot of our clients, talking about the same skills they use in risk management inside their business to actually act as a way of being able to manage their stress. So, how can they mitigate it? How can they manage it? How can they outsource it? How can they accept it in some respects? And these become the great tools we use in business. They can be great tools to use on ourselves as well.
Yeah, I like the outsourcing. That's a good way of dealing with it in business, but it's a shame we can't really outsource.
Well, you can, because, for example, if you've got a stress happening in your life, the way that you would outsource that is you go ask for help. Because
So is that like a problem shared, a problem half?
Exactly. Even if it's just a case of having a conversation with somebody. And again, there's loads of kind of evidence that shows that is the case. But even better, if you can actually go and find somebody who has been through that similar kind of scenario, come out of the other side with a better result, then straight away you're in a position where you can take great advice and almost replicate what they've done.
Yeah, that's a good place to be, definitely, taking the advice. A lot of advice to take. Said before, Frankenstein's monster, just glue it all together. Like, yeah, you gotta just pick your battles almost. But or pick what because you just can't implement everything. You'd explode, I think, if you tried to implement every piece of advice everybody ever gave you. So try it, see if it works for you. And if it's not, but it's genuinely not, then sack it off.
Yeah. So I think the only area we've not really touched on is that kind of idea of slowing down and taking those moments out of life where you can actually just stop and smell the roses effectively.
It's important to do.
Yeah. So how have you kind of incorporated this? Because again, that was not your life, a couple of years ago. You were like on it every single minute, every single day, you'd be out, you'd be doing something. But actually these days you have kind of brought in that element of actually slowing down, taking time for some things.
Well, I was initially going to give the answer badly. But after you saying that, that is kind of true in a way. I do feel like I'm still quite go, 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 but I do try to take those times on an evening just to stop. Like, I wouldn't really say I use the evenings to reflect, but I will say, like, in the shavasana of doing the yoga that I do sometimes in the week, like that is like a forced time to sort of just relax and think, and a little bit of meditation in the day that can also be useful, to just reflect on things and just in general just trying to be more grateful for things. That is a bit of an in the moment reflection. But yeah, in terms of like stopping to smell the roses is the phrase. Like, I do think I've still got a bit of a grind to go before I get to that point personally. Like, there's a lot of things I'm proud of, a lot of things I've done. Like, I would say it's just always the reflection in the moment. Like, if I'm resting between sets in the gym, like I'll be like, we did the 3 peaks challenge, 4 minutes to spare. That was awesome. Like, that is pretty mad. Like, I don't have to do that again. So I'd say I get like little blips in the day of smelling the roses. But in terms of like fully stopping for hours and just been like, I've achieved so much. Like, not quite there yet. Maybe when I'm like 95.
Oh, I love it when you're 95. But again, this is where I think sometimes you kind of you're pulling yourself short. So, for example, I know you've taken on doing more reading these days and giving yourself that time to kind of stop, reflect, enjoy some space. I know, for example, every time you finish the day's work, you have that kind of reset by going out and going taking yourself for a nice
Oh yeah, I
slow
didn't even
walk.
think of that. Like, yeah, looking staring into the distance. Yeah, these things are so dialed into my routine now. It's just second nature. I guess I haven't even reflected on the reflections. So yeah, like you pointing that out, I'm very grateful for, because that is a good point. Like, yes, I do take those times for myself specifically, because yeah, like I did used to be very much an extrovert, and now I do like those introvertial times for thought, where it's just me. So you are completely right. I do take those times out of my day to do that. I just hadn't actually reflected on that fact, so thank you for pointing that out.
No, you're welcome. And you're not alone. I mean, the thing is that a lot of people who do work with have exactly the same kind of problem. They feel like they go, go, go all the time. But actually, when you get them to stop and reflect and think, okay, well, actually, you can't go, go, go all the time. There's always going to be some moments where you're taking that time back. So, what have you done, for example, around you? Even simple things, looking after yourself, reading, reflecting, learning, going for gentle walks, etc. Spending time maybe just sat, maybe you've got a pet of some kind. How many times do you actually pet the animal? So again, I mean, it's shown to have a great boost for that kind of rest and relaxation piece.
Well, yeah, I currently stop for a coffee midday, where it's just like, I'm having a coffee. I'm not doing anything else. I'm just having a coffee. And that is a fantastic feeling, even though it's only 5 minutes. So, yeah, yes, basically, I do that. And I didn't even notice because it was just so dialed in. So, yeah, that is actually really great.
Love it. Cool. And I love you guys all as well. And it's a great big thank you for taking the time out to listen to this episode of the Fit for Business Life podcast. The Fit for Business Life podcast is brought to you in partnership with Sharp Fit for Life and the Business Body Network, helping busy professionals and their team to become more happier, healthier, and higher achieving in business and in life. If you'd like to join us as a guest or get in touch to know more about the topic we've been talking about, then we'd love to hear from you. Simply email hello@sharpfitforlife.com. Once again, thank you for listening to the Fit for Business Life podcast. The Fit for Business Life podcast is produced and presented by Wax Tie Limited. Copyright is applied.
Stick around for the next episode to see you grow a little bit. Like, you're still slowing down.
Bye bye for now.